Hello. Um, so I'm going to make a YouTube video on moths for you guys. Maria, Meredith, Andrea, Mike, Ken, Andrew, anybody else who sees this. So where to begin? When I was a little kid, I was in love with insects, and so I lived in Mariposa, which is a little town about 15 minutes away from Yosemite National Park, and I grew up in the shadow of Half Dome. It was literally right outside my front door every single day, looming off in the distance. So I lived in this valley basin. And Mariposa is the, Spanish word for butterfly. And so, the whole entire city is basically covered in these murals of these butterflies. Specifically the monarch butterfly, which, as everyone knows, migrates, from Mexico up north and all around the world. As a matter of fact, I think they're found on every single continent except for Antarctica, which is pretty impressive because, it's a long distance to fly. So they have monarch butterflies even here in New Zealand, where I'm at the moment. But so when I was a kid, I'd turn over stones and I'd, have mole crickets and earwigs and black widow spiders and, everything, centipedes, millipedes, beetles, all sorts of stuff, wasps, tadpoles, amphibians, reptiles. I'd capture anything, and that was kind of my hobby. Pill bugs, which are crustaceans, wood lice. So bugs and capturing them has always been a part of my life. But the two, well actually I'm going to say three, the three main things that I caught probably every single day were monarch butterflies, tiger swallowtails, and what's called, the common name is called a buckeye. And they're little butterflies, and they have, the owl, the bird eye on the hind wings as a predatory defense system. And so I guess monarch butterflies and tiger swallowtails and butterflies and moths in general have always literally been smack dab in my life. Even the name of my town, the murals, the kind of art things that I saw as a kid. The monarch butterflies, they migrate, it's during the winter, and so, or autumn, and so a lot of the trees are losing their leaves. And I remember as a kid I went out and there was this forest behind my yard, and I went to go explore it, and it was autumn. And so this was before I was in kindergarten. I was about 4, maybe just turned 5, and I had a lot of free range of kind of the mountainous area around that's a lot like Yosemite National Park. So there was a lot of, I guess, beauty and wildlife constantly surrounding me, and I guess that's what makes me, all excited about nature, is that it constantly was kind of my babysitter growing up. And so there was this tree, and I thought, it's autumn, it's orange, covered with leaves. And I remember accidentally poking one of the branches, because, as kids do, they throw stones or sticks, or they try to grab a stick and turn it into a sword, because I was playing pirates with my brother later that afternoon when he got home from school. And I touched the tree, and it just exploded. And I thought, it caught on fire, and I thought, a bomb hit it or something. I'm 4 years old, and all of a sudden, it must have been, it's redwood, so it's huge, literally huge, hundreds and hundreds of feet tall. And all of a sudden, the whole entire tree just burst into life, and it was covered head to toe in monarch butterflies, which you can actually Google, and BBC and all sorts of people have done programs about it, and it's a spectacular thing to witness. And I witnessed it at 4 years old. And I already was in love with bugs, and I already wanted to be an entomologist as a 4-year-old kid. And so I guess that was just something that was really special, that, I was all by myself. No one, I told my mom, and, they believed me and stuff, but, no one else witnessed for me. That was purely me at a young age, and it really inspired me. So I'm going to talk about moths and butterflies. As I've grown up, around 12, 13, I developed chronic insomnia. So I did the sleep trials, I did, sleeping pills and all sorts of stuff. And some work and some don't work, but at the end of the day, my brain becomes a lot more active, and I start thinking and asking big questions and overanalyzing my thoughts and overthinking a lot at night. And so I would stay up in front of my computer, or I'd be writing something, or I'd be reading a book, or I'd be playing some video game, and everyone else is sleeping, so I kept my light off, and so the only light is my computer screen, or a little lamp on my desk, or the TV, or a reading light, or something like that. And so I grew up in Indonesia, which is extremely right on the equator, which means rainforests, and rainforests have like 70% of the population of all animals on the planet. So as you can imagine, there was a lot of exotic bugs, lots of moths, and because out of the 190,000 so-called estimated species of Lepidoptera, which is moths and butterflies and skippers, 80 to 90% of them are thought to be moths. So there's only a small fraction which are actually butterflies or skippers, and so most of the, about 200,000 species, about 180,000 of them, or 175,000 of them, about, are moths. And most of them are really, really small, what are called geometer moths, and that's 20,000 species, Geometridae. And so, the little ones that you see all the time, they're tiny little things, and you poke them and they're cute and everything, but they're not big and exciting like perhaps a Luna moth, or a hawk moth, or a tiger moth, or something like that. And so, but in Indonesia, we get a little bit more of the bigger moths, so we would have actually, like gum moths, and, Luna moths, and actual tiger moths, and a lot of hawk moths, as hawk moths are actually a really prolific species, and so you catch them all the time in the States as well. But we would have a lot of big moth species, and they were beautiful, and they were up late at night with me, and everyone hates moths. As a matter of fact, motophobia, which is the German word for moth, which comes from midge and maggot, actually is one of the most common phobias in the entire world. A lot of people are afraid of insects, and actually psychologically it's been proven that people are afraid of insects because our brain literally can't predict the way that they're going to move. They move in a very kind of unnatural way. That's what happens when you have 6 to 8 legs. Arachnophobia is another huge one. And so they can't predict how they're going to move. And moths are special in this area as well because they fly at night. They navigate and fly at night by what's called, hypothetically, this is the theory, this is the predominating theory, and I actually agree with it, it makes a lot of sense. It's called celestial navigation, and so they fly according to reference points in the stars, much like sailors did. So they actually use stars and the moon and, natural lights as reference points to guide them, as well as, really good compound eyes, pheromones. Some of them actually can kind of produce clicking noises, which interferes with bats' echolocation. So moths have a lot of sensory organs going on, and because of this, they're able to find their way in the dark. But the issue is natural man-made lights confuses them, and when they get confused, they fly towards the light thinking it's either a star or the moon in a spiral. They actually don't fly really directly at the light. They fly at the light, but then they spiral around it because they're trying to associate themselves around what they think is, oh my goodness, why did the moon switch places, or why did the stars suddenly become right in front of me? And so it really confuses their navigation systems, and because of that, they fly erratically towards the light, kind of blind and confused, and their whole entire navigation system just goes out of whack, and it would be like someone throwing a flashbang in front of your eyes, and you asking you to show them the entire layout of your house. You're blind. You literally have no idea what's going on. You've completely lost all of your sensory perception. There's ringing in your ears. It's much like that with moths. And because of that, they do behave erratically, and they fly, and they hit people in the face because, people stand next to lights at night, and so people get scared of them. And so motophobia is a huge phobia, which is really sad because the reason why butterflies and skippers, because a lot of people don't know the difference between those, and they're very similar, and they're both usually active at day. A lot of people, why they like them is because they're very non-threatening insects. I mean, they drink out of what's two specialized mandibles which fuse together into a straw, and so it really acts, it's literally 2 mouth parts that fuse together and zip in place like a straw, and then they curl it with a special resin in there, in their mouth muscles, and so it becomes a proboscis, and so that's how they drink up nectar. Because of that, they literally can't bite you. They can't hurt you. They're very delicate. What a lot of people think is powder on the wings is actually specialized hair cells, which become scales. And so that's also a lot of sensory, but it also helps them be able to maintain flight, and it's how they also produce pheromones either. Yeah. So, they're very delicate. They can't hurt you. They're very pretty. They're very colorful. They fly. It's very elegant, and because of that, people love butterflies and skippers. But moths fly a little bit faster, and they fly at night. And because humans are one of the species that we have really bad night vision, oh my goodness, what's this thing flying at me? A lot of people assume it's a bat. They don't know what it is. They freak out. They don't like bugs. Moths aren't those pretty delicate, colors that most moths aren't those pretty delicate colors that butterflies are, and because of this, there's a stigma against them. And in the next video that I'm going to post, because this has gone on too long, I'm going to continue this. I'm going to actually talk about the more beautiful side of moths and interesting aspects of butterflies. So, yes. Continue watching. I'm sorry, this is going to be a long rant, but I think that hopefully you'll learn a lot, or at least kind of see how I have become obsessed with them.